Chapter 2476. After Chu Xiaofeng had insulted her, he had brought Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian away. Chu Ku's eyes were burning with rage, but she could not do anything to Chu Xiaofeng. The Eighth Elder's faction was at the core of power and had always been the Master's trusted aides. Their Third Elder's faction could not compare at all. Furthermore, Chu Xiaofeng had always found her an eyesore. It was only because of her previous status as a direct descendant that he could not target her. Now that she had lost her status as a direct descendant, the other party did not even place her in his eyes and she could not do anything about it. She had no choice but to choose other guards. However, what made Chu Ku almost faint from anger was that no matter which mercenary group she chose, as long as they were slightly stronger, they had all rejected her. That's right, all of them. Chu Ku was about to go mad with anger. What was going on? Have these mercenaries gone mad? Not a single one of them was willing to follow her. Even if there were some who were willing to follow her, they were not that powerful or were very weak and had no other choice. Only then had they reluctantly agreed to follow her. Chu Ku looked at the forced expressions on their faces and almost tore the hem of her clothes into pieces. She had not even despised these people for being ugly and they actually dared to despise her. Chu Ku's face was filled with disbelief. If it were not for the fact that she had no guards to follow her and could easily encounter danger and mishap in the abandoned continent, she would definitely raise her hand and slap them all to death. She had never suffered such humiliation before. Bastards, what was going on? However, Chu Ku did not know that all this had happened because she had called Luo Qingtong an ugly freak. Who was Luo Qingtong? She was someone that the mercenaries had specially invited to rely on. The mercenaries had hoped that she would be able to observe the details and see through the mission item at a glance. From there, she would be able to formulate various countermeasures based on its habits and environment. This would allow them to gain something from the abandoned continent and even reduce casualties and losses. Under these circumstances, Chu Ku had called Luo Qingtong an ugly freak. Wasn't that asking for a beating? Who would dare to approach her now? What if Luo Qingtong got angry and decided not to tell them anything about the abandoned continent? To put it bluntly, the children of the Tianfeng Chu family were precious. However, Chu Ku wasn't the only one from the Tianfeng Chu family present. They could have chosen anyone else, but they had to choose someone who was against Luo Qingtong. Wouldn't he be bored out of his mind? Therefore, everyone rejected Chu Ku. Not only that, even those who had no choice and reluctantly agreed to follow Chu Ku sent people to apologize to Luo Qingtong, explaining their difficulties. Luo Qingtong didn't expect these mercenaries to be so supportive. She didn't say anything, and they helped her vent her anger. Chu Ku was so angry that her face turned green. Her face was as hateful as a ferocious ghost, and her body trembled uncontrollably. She was delighted and immediately responded to those who came to apologize with a light smile, telling them not to mind it. When she arrived at the abandoned continent, she would share with them the information that she had seen with her blood eye. Of course, they didn't need to let Chu Ku know about these things, nor did they need to remind her. Naturally, everyone agreed with him. No one felt that Luo Qingtong was vengeful. Who asked Chu Ku to scold Luo Qingtong first? The one who provoked her first was despicable. Chapter 2477. Everyone began to choose the people they wanted to follow. Soon, the mercenaries in the square were all assigned. Almost every child of the Tianfeng Chu family was assigned to 5 mercenary regiments. There was a small interlude. Most of the mercenary regiments, especially the high-ranking mercenary regiments, flocked to Chu Xiaofeng's side and asked him to choose their own people. Chu Xiaofeng was baffled by this. However, he couldn't choose all of his guards as high-ranking mercenary regiments. This was an internal rule of the Chu family to prevent people from abusing their power for personal gain and causing the situation of the guards to be unfair. Therefore, generally, one person could only choose 2 high-ranking mercenary regiments. The others were optional. Red Tu and Yi Qianxian formed Black Fiend, which happened to be 2 high-ranking mercenary regiments. Therefore, even though Chu Xiaofeng was popular with everyone, he only chose 3 mid-level mercenary regiments in the end. Those who were chosen cheered, while the rest were dejected. In the end, they followed the others dejectedly. This scene made the other children of the Tianfeng Chu family twitch their lips. They didn't know where Chu Xiaofeng's magic came from to make these mercenary regiments flock to him like a flock of ducks. However, they didn't know that it wasn't Chu Xiaofeng who made the mercenary regiments flock to him, but Luo Qingtong. All the mercenaries were hoping to be in the same group as her. This was much safer than being separated from the other party. After all, even if Luo Qingtong could explain the general situation of the abandoned continent to them, what if they encountered some special things? One had to know that after they arrived there, they would follow their respective masters and be separated from Luo Qingtong and the others. This was something that no one expected at the beginning. Previously, they thought that they would all be together and protect the children of the Tianfeng Chu family together. Just like this, those who were chosen cheered, while those who weren't chosen could only follow others. Looking at the lively scene on Chu Xiaofeng's side, Chu Ku-er, who was alone behind her and barely managed to gather 5 mercenary regiments, almost couldn't control her temper. Bastard! Chu Xiaofeng, this bastard! I'm so angry. She gritted her teeth fiercely. Beside her, Chu Yufei was in a very good mood. Her luck was not bad. Because she looked sweet and wasn't weak, almost all the designated mercenary groups were willing to follow her. 2 advanced mercenary groups and 3 medium mercenary groups. Compared to those crooked people behind Chu Ku-er, they were much better. Chu Yufei was very pleased with herself. However, seeing Chu Ku-er's anger, she still said in a gentle voice, "Little sister Ku-er, don't be angry. Let's travel together. It just so happens that my combat ability is not as good as yours. If we are together, we can take care of each other." As soon as she said that, Chu Ku-er's expression instantly brightened. Chu Yufei was very good with words. She clearly felt that Chu Ku-er's guards were too lousy, so she went with her. However, the words she said were subtly flattering Chu Ku-er, making her feel very comfortable. "Okay, Sister Yufei, thank you. Don't worry, when we reach the abandoned continent, I will take good care of you." As for Chu Xiaofeng, he better not be complacent. When I get there and see my big brother and the others, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. As the spirit energy in the continent surged, it faintly rose and fell. Obviously, the Tianfeng Chu clan wanted to use this huge teleportation formation to send everyone to the abandoned continent in the flying star field. Luo Qingtong observed the array carefully. Although it wasn't as profound as the one in Heavenly Wind Inscription City, it was much easier to operate. However, it required a huge amount of energy. Other than the Tianfeng Chu clan, which had a deep foundation and a large number of experts who could provide assistance and energy, ordinary clans wouldn't be able to withstand the energy required to activate this array. She secretly memorized this teleportation formation in her heart. Her blood-red eyes faintly opened, imprinting this teleportation formation in her mind. Even though he was wearing a veiled hat and ordinary people couldn't see his face, he didn't slack off at all. In terms of scheming, he wouldn't lose to anyone. The people of the Red Flame mercenary group didn't disturb Luo Qingtong's observation. They already knew about Luo Qingtong's special ability. They knew that she liked to observe everything. Although they didn't know that it was the ability of her blood pupils, everyone knew that Luo Qingtong was very accurate in seeing things. Therefore, when she was observing things, they never disturbed her. It had become a habit. Chapter 2480. This huge teleportation formation was enough to teleport all of them to the abandoned high-level continent at once without leaving any traces behind. The Tianfeng Chu clan's people were very cautious. They wouldn't give anyone the chance to find out about their whereabouts. Luo Qingtong and the others stood in the teleportation formation. Then, under the power of the Tianfeng Chu clan's experts, they were teleported to an unfamiliar starry sky with a swoosh. There was already a group of Tianfeng Chu clan's experts waiting there. Opposite the experts from the Heavenly Wind Chu clan, there was another group of people who exuded a majestic aura. It seemed that they were the people of another aristocratic family that was competing with the Tianfeng Chu clan. Everyone on both sides was very careful and didn't want to expose their whereabouts. Their auras were restrained. Although their auras were vast and powerful, they didn't give Luo Qingtong and the others too much pressure. Otherwise, with so many experts of the human martial arts realm and even the 9th level of the human martial arts realm standing there, it was enough to suffocate warriors below the human martial arts realm and make it difficult for them to move. Of course, Luo Qingtong was fine. However, she was a warrior who hadn't even reached the venerable realm. It was too surprising that she wasn't pressured by experts above the human martial arts realm. At that time, Luo Qingtong would still have to pretend that she couldn't control herself. If she accidentally overdid it, she would be eliminated and not be allowed to enter the abandoned continent, which would be troublesome. It was good that this would happen. Luo Qingtong breathed a sigh of relief. Then, she quickly pretended to be in awe and shock. She looked at the experts of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the aristocratic family in front of her. She couldn't help it. Everyone else was like this. She couldn't be too maverick. When Chu Ku, Chu Yufei, and the others saw the super experts of the Tianfeng Chu clan appear, a proud and complacent look flashed across their faces. Especially Chu Yufei. She secretly made up her mind that she and her mother would not be kicked out of the Tianfeng Chu clan. Otherwise, how would she be able to enjoy such glory and pride in the future? There wouldn't be a second Tianfeng Chu family that would be willing to hold a lowly girl like her in their palms and protect her like a princess. She made up her mind and the light in her eyes flowed like the venom of a poisonous snake. The disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan stepped forward and bowed to the elders. The elders of the Tianfeng Chu family also nodded at them. Then, they looked at the experts of the aristocratic families of the Feixing field on the other side. People of the Lian family of the Flying Star planet. Now that the people of the Tianfeng Chu family are all here, how are your preparations going? Everyone is here. On the other side, the manager of the Lian clan said in a deep voice, "If your Tianfeng Chu clan has no other conditions, then let's begin." As he spoke, he gestured for the disciples of the Lian family to step forward. The group flew towards a huge abandoned continent. From afar, this abandoned high-level continent looked like a giant beast crawling in the starry sky. It was quiet and silent. Luo Qingtong felt that this abandoned continent was completely different from the barren and desolate continent from before. At least that barren and desolate continent still had some life. However, this abandoned continent was like an old man in his twilight years. It was surrounded by a dense aura of death. Not long after he returned to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he's already the number one among the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan. If it were any of you, who would have the ability and talent? Everyone was talking at the same time. There were those who were envious, those who were jealous, and those who were full of admiration. Luo Qingtong listened with great interest. She was curious about the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. She tried her best to poke her head out of the human wall formed by Hu Zhan and the others to see what the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family looked like. However, Hu Zhan and the others were really burly and tough. Luo Qingtong finally squeezed a little through the gap between them, but she only saw a flash of white light in front of her. In an instant, she swept into the abandoned continent. Chapter 2482. This is, Luo Qingtong's eyes widened. Chu Lingfeng. She looked at Chu Lingfeng, who was riding Snowball. His entire body was tall and sturdy, and he looked extraordinarily handsome. She blinked her eyes. Damn! The young master of the Tianfeng Chu family was this big blockhead. Just as Luo Qingtong's eyes widened, Chu Lingfeng scratched his head. That's strange. Little Shui, did you sense it? Why do I feel like master is nearby? It was said that the sixth sense of a simple-minded person was the most accurate. Chu Lingfeng was like this. Even if he was far away from Luo Qingtong, and Luo Qingtong was mixed in with a group of people. She had changed her appearance and gender, making it difficult for people to recognize her. However, he still had a faint feeling in his heart. That was why he paused when he entered the abandoned continent. However, this feeling came to Chu Lingfeng from time to time. Especially when he had just arrived at the Tianfeng Chu family. Every day, he hoped that master would quickly find him and bring him back, so that his mother wouldn't be worried. Therefore, every once in a while, he would have an illusion that Luo Qingtong had come to find him. Later on, when he was disappointed many times, he learned to restrain himself. His gaze swept over the place where everyone was gathered. He patted Snowball and continued to rush into the abandoned continent. He wanted to get the Tianluo grass. When he brought it back to find his mother and master, they would definitely be very happy. Especially master. This Tianluo grass would definitely greatly improve master's strength. When master became powerful, he and his mother would have someone to rely on. They also wouldn't need to be afraid that the Tianfeng Chu family would find his mother and bully her. Chu Lingfeng's thoughts were actually very simple. When he was weak, he was saved by Luo Qingtong. Then Luo Qingtong saved Yan Yang. In his heart, no one was more powerful than Luo Qingtong. Even if the Tianfeng Chu family praised him as a rare genius of the Tianfeng Chu family and regarded him as their young master. But in his heart, only Luo Qingtong was the most powerful. Even if the girl's strength wasn't as powerful as his, Chu Lingfeng believed that it was only temporary. No one could compare to master's strength and power. These people simply didn't know how powerful master was. This was Chu Lingfeng's thoughts. But when he was at the Tianfeng Chu family, he still didn't mention anything about Luo Qingtong. Otherwise, if people knew that the young lord of the Chu clan had a master, they would definitely go crazy. They would immediately hunt her down and deal with her. Chu Lingfeng didn't want Luo Qingtong to be in danger because of him. So he patiently stayed at the Tianfeng Chu family. First, the Tianfeng Chu family didn't let him leave. Second, he didn't want the Tianfeng Chu family to know about the existence of Luo Qingtong and Yan Yang. Therefore, no matter what the Tianfeng Chu family asked, he didn't pay attention. He only wanted to become stronger. That's right, become stronger. During this time, Chu Lingfeng didn't do anything in the Tianfeng Chu family. He only wanted to become stronger. He didn't have many thoughts, and his brain wasn't very bright. He always remembered what Yan Yang and Luo Qingtong had told him before. That was, if other people asked him something, he shouldn't answer. As for taking advantage, it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. Master said that he couldn't treat himself unfairly anywhere. Chapter 2483. When he becomes strong, he can go back and protect his master and mother. Chu Lingfeng really wants to become strong. When he thought about how he was powerless to face Luo Qingtong and Yan Yang when he was unconscious, his heart ached and he couldn't forgive himself. So when he couldn't go back to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he desperately tried to improve himself. He inherited Chu Tiany's bloodline power. In the entire Chu clan, only he and Chu Tiany had this kind of ability. The Tianfeng Chu clan valued him very much. It was also because of this that he could become the young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. All of the clan's resources were at his disposal. Whatever he wanted, it was all there. Chu Lingfeng didn't hold back and used all of the Tianfeng Chu clan's resources. He even beat up the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan in order to seize their cultivation resources. In order to become strong, Chu Lingfeng didn't care about anything. What's more, he had no interest in the Tianfeng Chu clan. What did those geniuses think of him have to do with him? If he had the ability, then he would defeat him. If he couldn't defeat him, then the clan's resources would be given to him. What was there to talk about? Master said that if he could solve it with his fists, then there was no need to talk nonsense. If one fist wasn't enough, then two. What's more, the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan weren't good people either. On the surface, they accepted his identity, but behind his back, they called him a bastard. They disliked his birth and despised his mother. Chu Lingfeng once accidentally heard a group of elders talking. They said that if a woman like his mother was found, then they should just give her the position of a concubine. As for the wife of the clan head, that Madame Xing was more suitable. Pay! His mother had suffered so much for him, so how could he let his mother suffer such grievances? Not to mention a concubine, even if his mother didn't want to be the wife of the clan head, he wouldn't let her be. He also wouldn't let the Tianfeng Chu clan find her. Don't think that he didn't know that the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to use his mother to tie him down. As for the man named Chu Tianyi, his words were pleasant to hear. He said that he liked his mother and hadn't forgotten her even after so many years. But who knew if he was telling the truth? Moreover, if it wasn't for him, his mother wouldn't have suffered so much because she was pregnant with him, and his family who wouldn't have almost been ruined. Chu Lingfeng thought for a moment. His mother would definitely not want to see him. Therefore, no matter what the other party said, he was too lazy to respond, let alone reveal Yan Nyang's existence. When Chu Tianyi left the True Spill continent in the past, he hadn't specifically searched for information about the True Spill continent. Thus, he simply couldn't find the existence of the True Spill continent. Once he leaves the abandoned continent, he will be able to return to find his mother and master. Chu Lingfeng rode on Snowball and disappeared into the sky above the abandoned continent. After his figure disappeared, Luo Qingtong recovered from the shock of seeing him. Damn, this news was too exciting. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan was actually Chu Lingfeng, that big fool. She was worried that he would be summoned by his father using their bloodline connection, and that he would encounter some bad treatment. Now, it seemed that he was doing very well. As Luo Qingtong thought this, she couldn't help but laugh. Yan Nyang had always been very concerned about Chu Lingfeng. Now that she had news of him, she would be able to feel at ease when she returned and told her. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. Chapter 2484. Luo Qingtong frowned. The Tianfeng Chu family attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, and they would not let him go easily. Moreover, although they attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, it was because of his talent. They would not be so tolerant to Yan Nyang. They might even use her as a tool to restrain Chu Lingfeng. This was a bit troublesome. It was not so easy for Yan Nyang to get her son back. But this could wait until later. Yan Nyang could also practice now. Once the strength of a soul-sound master was improved, ordinary masters could not compare with her. It was not certain who would look down on whom in the future. Speaking of which, Chu Lingfeng still did not know that Yan Nyang could practice. When she entered the abandoned continent and found him, she could give him a surprise. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's smile deepened. Especially when she thought of Chu Lingfeng, the silly big guy, who just scratched his head and looked around. Did that guy sense her existence, so he ran out to see her? Otherwise, how could he go in and then run out? Sure enough, silly people were particularly sensitive in other aspects. However, Snowball was her contract beast. Why didn't it move? Luo Qingtong did not sense the existence of Snowball herself. Otherwise, she would not have been so surprised when she saw Chu Lingfeng. She thought that the Tianfeng Chu family had used some means to temporarily block the connection between her and Snowball. She did not know whether it was by accident or on purpose. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Now she already had two little guys, Humph and Tuanzi. In addition, Snowball had been following Chu Lingfeng all the time. It was not impossible for it to contract with Chu Lingfeng. However, she was very unhappy with the way the Tianfeng Chu family did. Did they want to take her contract beast by force? Interesting. If they wanted to take Chu Lingfeng by force, it would be fine. But if they had other ideas, haha, Luo Qingtong sneered. She had known for a long time that these big clans usually had a lot of dirty dealings. It had nothing to do with her in the past, and she didn't want to get involved. But if they really offended her and her people, then don't blame her for being impolite. Luo Qingtong was a person who never suffered a loss. Her mind was racing, but she didn't show it on her face. She just followed the crowd and looked ahead in surprise and excitement. He seemed to be very excited about the appearance of the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone around her had the same expression, so it didn't seem out of place. As for Yi Qianxian and the others, their eyes lit up when they saw Chu Lingfeng. Master, it's Chu Lingfeng, the big fool by the evil doctor's side. Bei Qing's voice rang out in Yi Qianxian's mind. Yes. Yi Qianxian responded in a low voice. His eyes lit up as he looked at Chu Lingfeng. Chu Lingfeng had appeared here. If that woman was also here, even if she hid her identity, she would go and meet him, right? When that time came, he would be able to find her. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian's deep black eyes revealed a hint of joy. When we arrive at the abandoned continent, find a way to find Chu Lingfeng and keep an eye on him. He gave the order. Yes. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others lowered their heads in excitement, as if they could see the hope of finding the evil doctor in the future. There was no other way. The evil doctor was too good at hiding. They had never seen such a powerful person. They had been searching for him in circles. Chapter 2485. Those noble ladies in Tiandu looked down on the evil doctors, but they didn't know that they were nothing compared to the evil doctors. They were only better than the evil doctors in terms of background and resources. What if they were in the evil doctor's position? They wouldn't even know how they died. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were excited, while Yi Qianxian subconsciously looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. He wanted to see how she would react to Chu Lingfeng's appearance. But to his disappointment, Luo Qingtong's face was filled with excitement, no different from the others. He frowned and looked at Luo Qingtong for a while, then turned his head away. Yi Qianxian didn't know why he was so obsessed. He kept thinking that Luo Qingtong was Luo Xiaoqi. He had already checked her identity, but he still didn't give up. He pressed his forehead and decided to draw a line with her after they arrived at the abandoned continent, so that he wouldn't always have these inexplicable thoughts. Anyway, Chu Lingfeng had already appeared. If Luo Qingtong wanted to take part in this operation, she would definitely show up. As for Luo Xiaoqi, she had nothing to do with him. As Yi Qianren thought of this, she closed her eyes again. The Tianfeng Chu family and the Lian family of Flying Star acted very quickly. After the top disciples rushed in, it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn. This was also to prevent anyone from attacking the top disciples of the two families. Moreover, those who entered first would have the advantage. There was no problem in arranging the order of entry according to one's identity. Okay, let's go. When it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn, he said to Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian, and the others. Follow me closely. Don't act on your own. When we get there, I'll tell you some simple information. in order to prevent any mistakes or omissions in this operation. The Tianfeng Chu family didn't mention anything about the abandoned continent. Everything was left to the people of Mercenary City to explore. Of course, the children of the Tianfeng Chu family had some information in their hands. For the sake of their own safety, they would also inform the mercenaries around them of the information that they knew. As for how much the children of the Tianfeng Chu clan knew, it depended on how high their status was. There is no doubt that some people know more and some know less. As for Chu Ku and Chu Yufei, one was from the direct line of descent, while the other was Madame Xing's daughter. Even if his current status was not as high as before, he still knew far more than Chu Xiaofeng. Especially Chu Yufei. The amount of information she knew was comparable to those top disciples. Now that Chu Ku was with her, she knew a lot of things that she didn't know before. At this moment, she sneered at Luo Qingtong and the others and said, "That's right. Just follow him obediently. Don't lose your life because of it. You must know that this high-level abandoned continent used to have extremely high energy. There are many demon beasts and spirit plants living inside. Although there are many opportunities, the danger is 10 against 10. You must be very careful." As she spoke, she snorted lightly. Her gaze swept past Yi Qianxian, then she raised her head arrogantly and said, "Of course, if you beg me, perhaps I will take you with me." Chapter 2486. To put it bluntly, Chu Ku still had her eyes on Yi Qianxian. She had her eyes on this man. She didn't know why, but she wanted this man to crawl in front of her. As long as she thought of this, her heart was very excited. The mercenaries by Chu Ku's side were all trash. They were low-level mercenary groups. Even if Yi Qianxian and the others joined her side now, it wouldn't be considered a violation of the internal rules of the Chu family. Moreover, she could casually abandon a low-level mercenary group. As for whether Chu Xiaofeng and the others wanted it or not, it was up to them. Chu Ku's eyes were burning. Chu Yufei listened to her and didn't object. Previously, she didn't want Chu Ku to be followed by Yi Qianxian. But now, she and Chu Ku walked to the side. She hoped that Yi Qianxian would come over. After all, this way, she could be with him. Compared to the arrogant and domineering Chu Ku, he would definitely think that a considerate, beautiful, and pleasant girl like her was many times better than Chu Ku. Chu Ku was a green leaf that was destined to set off the fresh flower that was her. With this thought in mind, Chu Yufei gently tugged at Chu Ku's sleeve to express her intention to persuade her. However, she didn't say anything. She only looked at Yi Qianxian and Chu Xiaofeng apologetically, as if there was nothing she could do. After hearing Chu Ku's words, Chu Xiaofeng immediately became angry. "Chu Ku, are you trying to poach people in front of me?" He laughed in anger. The information he had was indeed not as much as Chu Ku and Chu Yufei. Among them, the main variable was Chu Yufei. Her mother was Madame Xing. And Madame Xing had an extremely high status in the Tianfeng Chu family for so many years. Although she was a lowly woman brought back by the family head from a remote star region, it was said that she had saved the family head's life. For so many years, she had been respected in the Tianfeng Chu family because of her identity as his savior. And she was also very scheming. Very quickly, she gained a foothold in the Tianfeng Chu family and obtained the approval of a group of family elders. If the family head hadn't insisted, she wouldn't be Madame Xing today, but the wife of the family head. Under such circumstances, it was normal that Chu Yufei knew more about the abandoned continent than he did. After all, she was Madame Xing's only daughter. And when she was first born, she was mistaken as the daughter of the family head. It was only after a group of elders forced the patriarch to marry Madame Xing that the patriarch clarified that she was not his daughter. But even then, because the family head didn't have any childrens, he had always doted on her like his own daughter. Chooses, SSSSS, and SSSSS family. SSSSTSS is, of a, SS if of Chu, it. SSSS, Chu Xiaofeng looked at Chu Yufei. He didn't intend to target her. Their bloodline was a firm supporter of the family head. Madame Xing had saved the family head's life, so he wouldn't target Chu Yufei. However, he wasn't so polite to Chu Ku-er. Chu Ku-er's expression froze the moment he said that. Chapter 2487. Didn't you say so yourself? These guards are all up to us to choose. Although they followed you before, if they suddenly don't want to follow you anymore and want to follow me, then you can't blame me, right? Chu Ku-er raised her head and responded with the words that Chu Xiaofeng used against her. Her voice was indescribably sharp. Okay. Chu Xiaofeng looked at her and smiled coldly. Which one of you wants to follow her? Quickly go over now. The information I have is indeed not as much as hers. If he was persuaded by Chu Ku-er with just a few words, he didn't want such a person. If he came, he would only be a fence-sitter who would run when there was trouble. It was better to join Chu Ku-er and her group as soon as possible. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, Luo Qingtong and the others didn't move at all. The people of the Red Flame mercenary group and Yi Qianxian couldn't be bothered with Chu Ku-er and the others. The remaining 3 mercenary groups looked at Chu Ku-er as if she was an idiot. What kind of joke was this? Because she knew more information about the abandoned continent, she wanted them to follow her. She probably didn't know Luo Xiaoqi's ability, right? When it came to information about the abandoned continent, who could compare to this young man who had meticulous observation skills? Luo Qingtong could easily analyze the environment and habits of the mission items, and even how to deal with them, and what their weaknesses and restraints were. Under such circumstances, how could an arrogant and despotic woman like Chu Ku compare to her? She even used this to tempt them. What an idiot! They wouldn't follow her unless their brains were fried. Didn't they see that the mercenary groups behind her and the girl named Chu Yufei were all ready to move? Were they waiting for them to run over so that they could fill the empty space? The group of mercenaries all looked at Chu Ku-er with contempt, and no one moved. Chu Ku originally wanted Yi Qianxian and the others to come over and trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance. In the end, who would have thought that not only did Yi Qianxian and the others not come over, but even those ordinary mercenary groups didn't come over. Not only that, but they also looked at her as if she was a fool and a joke. These lowly trash. Chu Ku-er's face was twisted to the extreme, and her expression was unspeakably ugly. Beside her, Chu Yufei's expression was also a little ugly. After all, she was on Chu Ku-er's side. When the latter was humiliated, she, who had similar thoughts, also felt a little embarrassed. However, due to the fact that she was smart enough, she did not say anything the entire time. In fact, she did not even speak in support of Chu Ku-er. Thus, the humiliation and shock she received was not as intense as Chu Ku-er's. The latter was the one who had truly lost all face. Compared to being ignored at this moment, he was like a fool who was being laughed at by others. You! Chu Ku-er was so angry that she pointed at Luo Qingtong and the others. She was about to fly into a rage. At this moment, a dignified voice suddenly sounded from the side. What's going on? Why are you still here? This voice came from the Tianfeng Chu clan's strong cultivators. It was the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken. Everyone looked up and realized that other than them, the other disciples and guards of the Tianfeng Chu clan had all left. Grandfather. Seeing the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken, Chu Ku-er's mouth twitched, and she almost cried. Chapter 2488. Upon hearing her voice, Luo Qingtong immediately frowned. Chu Ku's grandfather, the third elder of the third branch. Luo Qingtong frowned as she watched the other party rush over. What's going on? The third elder looked over with a dignified expression. When he saw his granddaughter's tear-stained face, he immediately frowned and looked sharply at Chu Xiaofeng. Chu Xiaofeng, did you attack Cooper? His voice was filled with anger. He didn't even ask for the reason and just pinned the crime on Chu Xiaofeng. The aura around him was about to suppress Chu Xiaofeng. The other elders behind him were one step behind and could not stop him at all. If the third elder were to suppress Chu Xiaofeng with his aura, he would immediately suffer internal injuries. In this way, when Chu Xiaofeng entered the abandoned continent, it would be difficult for him to move an inch due to his internal injuries. It would be good enough if he could preserve his life there, let alone fight for the sky Luo grass. At that time, Luo Qingtong and the others would not be able to act wantonly because of him. This was definitely not the result that Luo Qingtong wanted. With that thought, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned and she suddenly pounced in Chu Xiaofeng's direction. Her movements were extremely ingenious as she avoided Chu Xiaofeng's subconscious counterattack and pushed him back a few steps to the left. The two of them coincidentally avoided the third elder's oppressive aura. Seeing this scene, Yi Qianqian's eyes suddenly narrowed. Right at this moment, the third elder's furious voice resounded. Bastard, you! He originally wanted to say that Luo Qingtong dared to suddenly appear and interrupt him to teach Chu Xiaofeng a lesson. But at this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly burst into tears. She really started to cry. She hugged Chu Xiaofeng's thigh and cried loudly, "Woo woo woo, I'm sorry. Young Master Xiaofeng. We didn't know what was good for us and implicated you. We will immediately switch places with the mercenaries behind Miss Cooper. Let her mercenaries protect you. Third elder, please don't hit young Master Xiaofeng again." Luo Qingtong cried and said to the third elder, "It's all our fault. We were the ones who didn't know what was good for us and didn't want to exchange with Miss Cooper's mercenaries. It has nothing to do with young Master Xiaofeng." Luo Qingtong's voice was extremely loud. Her cries could be said to be earth-shattering. As soon as she spoke, the gazes of the crowd all turned to Chu Cooper. Or rather, he was staring behind her. He saw that there was only a group of low-level mercenaries behind Chu Cooper. Looking at the group of Yi Qianxian and the others behind Chu Xiaofeng, as well as the valiant-looking members of the Red Flame mercenary group, as well as the middle-ranked mercenary groups that didn't seem weak. Everyone from the Heavenly Wind Chu clan immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that Chu Ku'er didn't have the ability and could only find a group of low-level mercenaries to follow her. In the end, she wasn't satisfied and set her sights on Chu Xiaofeng. She wanted him to give his mercenaries to her and exchange with her. What a joke. She didn't have the ability and actually wanted to snatch someone else's guards. Not only that, she didn't manage to snatch them and even complained to the elders. And the third elder was actually biased towards Chu Ku'er. It seemed that the third elder's family was indeed very indignant about losing their status as a direct descendant. Otherwise, why would the third elder lay his hands on a junior of the family? Chapter 2489. Everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family thought so and immediately looked at the third elder with different gazes. As for Chu Xiaofeng, after hearing Luo Qingtong's voice, he quickly reacted. He secretly praised this young man from the Red Flame Mercenary Corps for his cleverness. At the same time, he clenched his fists and looked at the third elder with stubbornness and determination. He said loudly, "Third elder, why did you attack me? Is it right for Chu Ku'er to want to snatch my mercenary? Is there such a rule in the family? If there is, please enlighten me, third elder. Otherwise, the people in the eighth elder's line will never yield." Well said. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, another dignified voice also spoke at this time. Then, with a boom, a violent and vast power pressure pressed down on the third elder. In an instant, he was forced to take 2 steps back and his face flushed red. It was obvious that he had just suffered a great blow. Granduncle. Chu Xiaofeng looked at the old man who appeared in front of him with a surprised and excited expression. The old man raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. He praised, "You're very good. You didn't embarrass the 8th elder's line." At this point, he suddenly raised his hand and a strong wind blasted in Chu Ku'er's direction. With a smack, Chu Ku'er's face was slapped hard. In an instant, she was sent flying by the slap. "Humph. You're not strong enough and have no one to follow you. Instead of reflecting on yourself, you actually want to snatch the mercenary of your own family. How shameless of you. The people in the 3rd elder's line don't teach their disciples well. The people in the 8th elder's line will teach them a lesson for you." The 8th elder's expression was sullen. The scene of the 3rd elder attacking Chu Xiaofeng just now really angered him. If the fault was on the 8th elder's line, then so be it. However, it was clearly Chu Ku, who was rude and unreasonable and wanted to snatch the mercenary of their line's younger generation. The 3rd elder did not distinguish between right and wrong and actually wanted to attack a younger generation. How could he tolerate such humiliation? The other party was so shameless, so why should he care about his status? This palm wind did not seriously injure Chu Ku'er, which was already the last bit of face he left for the family. He did not want to make things too ugly outside and become a joke to the Lien family of the Flying Star. But today's matter, he would never let the 3rd elder and his people off. The 8th elder's words were aggressive, and the 3rd elder's face was extremely ugly. He did not expect things to turn out like this. Chu Ku had actually complained to him because she had failed to snatch Chu Xiaofeng's mercenaries. Bastard, that vile spawn. How dare he? Chu Xiaofeng that's his line, he subconsciously, Xiaofeng's choose Chu Xiaofeng. And subconsciously, he thought for Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng S Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng elder Chu Xiaofeng's line. That vile spawn had made him lose face. Faced with the 8th elder's scolding and the various gazes of the Tianfeng Chu family, the 3rd elder's face suddenly turned purple. He wished he could give Chu Ku another slap and kill her. That would be better than making a fool of himself. Just as he was glaring fiercely at Chu Ku'er, Chu Yufei finally came to her senses from the turn of events. Chapter 2490. No, 3rd elder, it's not like that. In her panic, she couldn't explain the situation clearly. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's pitiful voice sounded again. "That's right, it's all our fault. Miss Yufei, don't say any more. I know that we didn't know what was good for us. Miss Ku'er wanted us to go over to her side, so we should have gone over." She sniffed and continued, "It's us who didn't know what was good for us. Miss Ku'er clearly said that her bloodline would inherit the Chu family sooner or later. We didn't want to break our promise to young Master Xiaofeng, so we didn't go over. If we knew this would happen, we would have gone over directly. It's our fault. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened." The moment Luo Qingtong's words came out, there was a moment of silence. The veins on 3rd elder's face almost popped out. "Scoundrel, you're talking nonsense. Ku would never say that." 3rd elder said, but there was some uncertainty on his face. Because he knew his granddaughter's temperament too well. She was arrogant and despotic, and always talked about her identity as a direct descendant. If she had been provoked by Chu Xiaofeng in a fit of anger because she had failed to get the mercenaries, she would have scolded him without thinking. He would still believe her. Evil creature. Evil creature. If he had known that this evil creature was so capable, he would have broken her legs at home. He would have made it impossible for her to participate in this operation. Third elder's expression was malevolent, and he was extremely regretful. When Luo Qingtong heard his words, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned pale in an instant. She nodded forcefully, and shrank back as she said, "Yes, I didn't. Miss Cove didn't say. I probably heard wrongly." Heard wrongly? How could he have misheard such a thing? Moreover, even if he had heard wrongly, Chu must have heard wrongly. This also meant that Chu Ku should have said something similar. Otherwise, how could this young man say such things? The people from the Tianfeng Chu clan glanced at Luo Qingtong's figure. After seeing her strength, they were even more certain of her words. After all, they didn't believe that a low-level mercenary like Luo Qingtong would dare to frame a descendant of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone looked at the third elder with even more profound expressions. After the eighth elder heard Luo Qingtong's words, he suddenly sneered, waved his sleeve and said, "So that's how it is. I was wondering why the younger generation of the third elder was so bold. It turns out that they have a backer. Third elder, should I congratulate you in advance for taking over the Chu clan in the future?" The moment the eighth elder's words left his mouth, the third elder's face turned ashen. His lips twitched, and then he roared angrily, "This is all slander. Chu Tongming, this is definitely a scheme of the eighth elder's faction. We, the third elder's faction, will never admit it. I will not let this matter rest." With that, he waved his sleeve and ran away. He looked like he was about to flee. He couldn't stay here any longer. After the third elder left, Chu Yufei covered her mouth and cried out in shock. She only realized now that she had casually defended Chu Ku, and caused a lot of trouble. Who would have thought that the young man from the Red Flame mercenary group would pin such a huge accusation on the third elder's faction? Chapter 2491. Moreover, she didn't know what to say. Luo Qingtong's last sentence, she didn't say anything. She must have heard wrongly. He had cut off all her avenues of defense. Even if she stood up to prove that Chu Ku, didn't say that, no one would believe her. Not to mention clearing Chu Ku's name of not snatching. Because no matter what she said, even Luo Qingtong would agree with her in the end and admit that Chu Ku, didn't snatch Chu Ku. The people from the Tianfeng Chu family wouldn't believe it either. They would only think that Luo Qingtong denied it against her will because of the strength and power of Chu Ku, and the third elder's faction. Oh my God! This young man. Chu Yufei looked in disbelief at the young man who was walking towards the Red Flame mercenary group with his head lowered. When the latter walked in front of the Red Flame mercenary group, the mercenaries of the Red Flame mercenary group even raised their hands to pat his head. He raised his head and smiled. His smile was full of sunshine. This young man was too scary. When Chu Yufei looked at Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian was also staring at Luo Qingtong. When the latter rushed out to push Chu Xiaofeng away, he almost pulled her back. They were too similar. Whether it was the trick or the vengeful personality. Even the action of rushing to Chu Xiaofeng and pushing him away gave him the same feeling as Luo Qingtong. She just avoided the third elder's aura. Was it a coincidence or? Yi Qianxian's eyes were fixed on Luo Qingtong. The latter felt his burning gaze and raised her head to see that his eyes were fixed on her body. She felt a burst of bafflement in her heart. What was wrong with this person? Did she show anything just now? Luo Qingtong carefully recalled her actions and words just now and realized that there was nothing wrong with them. The third elder had obviously attacked Chu Xiaofeng indiscriminately at that time. So, it was impossible to reason with him at that time. If he were to make a move on Chu Xiaofeng, even if the situation was explained later, he would not admit to it. The biggest possibility was that they would push the blame onto the mercenaries, saying that they had instigated Chu Xiaofeng to turn their clansmen against each other. Under such circumstances, and with Chu Ku adding fuel to the fire, it was very likely that all of them would be in trouble. Luo Qingtong felt that there was nothing wrong with what she had done. Moreover, he did not reveal his strength or ability. Why was this person staring at her? Could it be that he saw something? Luo Qingtong's eyes were alert. She instantly raised her guard against Yi Qianxian. She hadn't forgotten that the other party had come for her identity as Luo Qingtong. If the other party really found clues about her relationship with Luo Qingtong, it would be very disadvantageous for her and the True Spill continent. Luo Qingtong's thoughts turned. She did not avoid Yi Qianxian's gaze. Instead, she walked towards him. How is it? Brother, aren't I very powerful? Shouldn't you thank me? She smiled as she approached Yi Qianxian and whispered. At the same time, she raised her hand and slapped towards Yi Qianxian's arm. There was no other way. She couldn't reach his shoulder, but his waist, the other party did not allow her to slap him. His arm should be fine now, right? Luo Qingtong's movements were very bold. Chapter 2492. Thank you for what? His voice was cold. Even though he was wearing a mask and his voice was obstructed, she could still hear the bone-chilling coldness in his voice. He had never been stingy with his gentleness to anyone other than Luo Qingtong. In other words, no one other than Luo Qingtong could enjoy his gentleness. Thank you for solving a big problem for you, Luo Qingtong said with a smile. She approached him and pulled his sleeve tightly. She looked as if she was afraid that someone would hear her. She whispered in his ear, if I hadn't solved the big problem of Chu Ku for you, you might have been ordered to follow Chu Ku by that old man, third elder. After all, her side is so pitiful. She only has a few low-level mercenary corps with her. How could third elder bear to do that? She must think that our young master Xiao Feng bullied her. Then she will cry and ask you to go over. Then you will be in trouble. Luo Qingtong sighed and shook her head as she spoke. Is that so? Yi Qianxian listened to her excellent performance and felt that even her ability to lie through her teeth was exactly the same as that woman. Thinking of this, he was about to raise his hand and push Luo Qingtong away because she was too close to him. Then he looked at her coldly and said, didn't you say that she wanted us to go over together? Why am I the only one now? He reminded her of what she said before. It was not for him alone. I was just saying that on purpose to fool the Heavenly Wind Chu clan. Luo Qingtong's eyes darted around. She admitted without hesitation that she had been fooling around. You see, that woman Chu Ku's eyes never left you. Even a blind person would know that she was coveting you. In short, I saved your beauty. Ahem, no, your chastity. Ahem, that's still not right. In short, I saved you from the abyss of suffering. So, brother, let's sever our previous apology. No, we're even, right? As Luo Qingtong spoke, Yi Qianxian's expression darkened. And it was getting darker and darker. He looked at the young man whose words were as irritating as the woman's, and his thin lips curved into a cold arc under the mask. Beauty, chastity. Cut him in half. Yi Qianxian was so angry that he laughed. So, you came here just to tell me this? Even? Yeah. Luo Qingtong nodded without hesitation. Nonsense, if it wasn't for this, why did she suddenly run over to talk to him? Of course, it was also to dispel his suspicions. After all, he had already looked at her with such a gaze, but she didn't avoid it. Instead, she purposely moved closer to him. She had a clear conscience, right? On the other hand, she really didn't know how to sew. Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian and suggested seriously, "Look, brother, you're not at a disadvantage. A piece of clothing in exchange for your chastity. You've made a huge profit, you know. Look at your handsome body. If you really end up in Chu Ku's hands, you'll be eaten clean. So, hurry up and wash it. Do you agree?" However, just as Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian, the man's cold voice suddenly rang out. "I don't agree." As soon as Yi Qianxian spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice instantly stopped. Chapter 2493. You don't agree. Are your clothes more important than your chastity? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The other party's answer was completely out of her expectations. This man just wanted to go against her, didn't he? Luo Qingtong deeply suspected that the other party was doing this on purpose. What the hell, wasn't he unwilling to have anything to do with her before? Why was he like a piece of sticky candy that she couldn't get rid of? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The latter was delighted to see her bristling like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Even when Luo Qingtong repeatedly mentioned the taboo of his chastity and beauty, he didn't care so much. The haze and coldness in his eyes dissipated a lot. Just sew your clothes properly. Of course, you can choose another path and overturn what you just said to the Tianfeng Chu family. However, even if you can do it, when I go over to Chu Ku's place, I will ask her to bring you along. As soon as Yi Qianxian said this, Luo Qingtong instantly fell silent. MMP. You win. Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart and then left gloomily. Looking at her back as she left, the corners of Yi Qianxian's lips curled up slightly, but then he quickly suppressed it. What was going on? Facing the other party, he became more and more happy. He had clearly decided to draw a line with the other party, but when he heard that she wanted to cut ties with him, an inexplicable anger rushed up in his heart and he rejected her without hesitation. Was it because the other party was too similar to Luo Qingtong? So he couldn't accept the other party drawing a line with him. Yi Qianxian frowned and stared at Luo Qingtong with gloomy eyes. As soon as Luo Qingtong turned around, she felt Yi Qianxian's gaze on her. She cursed in her heart. Was this person done yet? Was this not enough to dispel his suspicions? Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart, and then returned to the Red Flame mercenary group. When the latter and the others saw her return with a gloomy face, they couldn't help but laugh. Gui Feng rubbed her head and chuckled. What's wrong? Little Seven came back after being defeated. Did you fail to ask for a favor and get rejected? As soon as he said that, the crowd laughed even louder. Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth as she looked at her teammates who were kicking her when she was down. What sin had she committed to meet such a group of people? Not only did he not seek justice for her, he even mocked her. Luo Qingtong forgot that this was entirely her own fault. Who told her to go against Yi Qianming? Just as she was looking at the Red Flame mercenary group angrily, Chu Xiaofeng returned from the Tianfeng Chu family's team. He had just been called over to ask questions. Although the Tianfeng Chu family believed Luo Qingtong's words, they still had to ask more questions. The ambition of the third elder's family was destroyed. This was not a trivial matter. The Tianfeng Chu family would definitely investigate it carefully. Not to mention others, the eighth elder's family would never let go of this good opportunity. Speaking of which, Luo Qingtong had helped them a lot. Therefore, Chu Xiaofeng was looking at Luo Qingtong with joy in his eyes. Ha! Not bad. You're really something. As he spoke, he threw a punch at Luo Qingtong with a smile on his face. You're called Luo Shaoqi, right? Well done. When we get to the abandoned continent, I'll protect you. His fist was aimed at Luo Qingtong's chest. It was originally an action between men to express their feelings and gratitude, but Luo Qingtong's face turned green. Damn it, you could have hit anywhere, but you just had to hit my chest. She stared at Chu Xiaofeng's fist. She really couldn't dodge or block it. Chapter 2494. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed over from the side. Luo Qingtong sensed the appearance of this gust of wind. She didn't resist and allowed this gust of wind to push her body back. In this way, her body just missed Chu Xiaofeng's punch. The latter's fist directly hit the air in front of her. Ha! Chu Xiaofeng was stunned. Although the punch he just threw didn't carry any power, it was just a simple punch. But with Luo Qingtong's strength, she shouldn't have been able to dodge it. He was puzzled in his heart, but his attention was quickly attracted by Yi Qianxian and the others who were walking over. We should go. The others have been in the abandoned continent for a long time. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. The pair of eyes hidden behind the mask didn't even look at Luo Qingtong. If Luo Qingtong didn't feel that the gust of wind was indeed coming from his direction, she wouldn't have been able to tell that it was him. Why did this man suddenly help her? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Thinking of Yi Qianxian suspecting that she was Luo Qingtong, she immediately frowned. Could it be because of this that he deliberately took action? He even suspected that she was Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, she didn't act rashly. But then again, he had clearly patted her chest and touched her Adam's apple. She was completely in the appearance of a man. Why was he still so stubborn? Luo Qingtong was also speechless. If it weren't for the fact that she really didn't have something growing down there, Luo Qingtong would have taken off her pants and shown it to him. Did he have to be so persistent? There's something wrong with your brain. Big brother. Luo Qingtong was speechless at Yi Qianxian's stubborn attitude of suspicion. If it were someone else, they would have long been dispelled by her several methods. This person was so difficult to deal with. Really troublesome. Fortunately, her small illusion pill had almost no flaws, so she wasn't afraid of him checking. Unless he took off her pants. But, the other party didn't look like someone who would do such a thing. Luo Qingtong's gaze lightly glanced at Yi Qianxian's cold and heavy aura. She wasn't worried. What's more, even if the other party really took off her pants, she could think of a way to deal with it. It was just a little troublesome, and there was no guarantee that she wouldn't be exposed. Let's see who could outplay who. With this thought, Luo Qingtong relaxed a little. As for Chu Xiaofeng, when he heard Yi Qianren's words, he had already forgotten that Luo Qingtong had just dodged his punch. Yi Qianya's words reminded him that he was already far behind the others. Although he had gained the recognition of the clan and even obtained the opportunity to deal with the Third Elder's faction, it was not worth it to fall behind. Of Luo Feng of Luo Feng of Luo Feng of Luo Feng of Luo Feng's S. Of Luf Luo Feng Ing, Luf Luo Feng of Luo. Of Luo Feng is of Luo Feng. If he could stand out from the other disciples, it would be of great benefit to him. What's more, there were many heaven and earth treasures in the abandoned continent. Because the Tian Luo grass had been bred, the other heaven and earth treasures had also benefited from it. The spiritual flowers and herbs that should have withered and died out long ago were all nourished by the power of the great Tao and glowed with a different kind of vitality and vigor. Under such circumstances, they were completely different from the spiritual flowers and herbs that grew elsewhere. Whether it was in terms of effect or level, they were much higher. Chu Xiaofeng naturally wanted to take more back. After all, there was only one Tian Luo grass, and it wasn't easy to get. Chapter 2495. Let's go. He said to Luo Qingtong and the others and led them to the abandoned continent. At this moment, among the groups from the Heavenly Wind Chu family and the Lian family, only Chu Ku's group and their group had not entered the abandoned continent. After they left, Chu Ku and Chu Yufei also walked out of the Tianfeng Chu clan's team. Chu Ku's face was covered in tears and there was a big palm print on her face. The eighth elder did not use too much strength in that slap. But even so, Chu Ku-er fainted from the slap. Half of her face was swollen like a steamed bun. It would take at least 180 days for the swelling to subside. And this was the result of the eighth elder deliberately showing mercy. Otherwise, Chu Ku would have died under his palm. At this moment, she was crying bitterly. No matter how she tried to explain, the Tianfeng Chu clan's people did not listen. They even looked at her as if she was an unteachable child and drove her out like she was trash. Chu Ku-er's heart was filled with indescribable hatred. *tch, that Luo Shaoqi, I will not let her go. Chu Ku did not expect that she just wanted to trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance, but in the end, she caused such a big trouble. God knew that when she woke up and learned what had happened to her clan, she almost went crazy. She had never said anything that would harm her bloodline, but everyone felt that she had said it. Chu Xiaofeng's testimony made her unable to defend herself. And all of this was because of Luo Shaoqi. If it were not for her, she would not have become like this. And now, the unlucky one should be Chu Xiaofeng. After learning about what had happened from Chu Yufei, she hated Luo Qingtong to the core. Luo Shaoqi, just you wait. She would definitely die a horrible death. Chu Ku-er's face was gloomy. She would be despised by the entire Third Elder's clan. If she continued to stay in the Tianfeng Chu clan's team, she might be beaten to death by the Third Elder who rushed back in exasperation. Under such circumstances, not to mention being injured, even if she was seriously injured, she would crawl to the abandoned continent. That was her only chance to turn things around. If she could stand out among the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan, not only would she be able to obtain the Tianluo grass, but she would also be able to obtain countless other treasures. This would greatly improve her status in the Tianfeng Chu clan in the future. Otherwise, she would really be finished. The more Chu Ku thought about it, the more resentful she felt. She firmly disagreed with Chu Yufei's persuasion to stay with the Tianfeng Chu family to recuperate. Sister Yufei, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I can't stay in Tianfeng Chu's house. Otherwise, I'll be beaten to death by my father. Chu Ku-er looked at Chu Yufei and said firmly while crying. Chu Yufei was also in a bad mood. She didn't want to travel with Chu Ku-er at all. Previously, it was because Chu Ku-er's identity was useful to her. Now, Chu Ku-er was already someone that everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to beat up. How would it help her? Not only that, but she was also a big burden. When she thought of the mercenaries that Chu Ku had recruited and how they were all repulsive and low-level mercenaries, she felt very angry. She actually had to bring such a burden with her. How could she be happy about this? However, even if she was unhappy, she could only bring her along. Chapter 2496. Chu Yufei was depressed in her heart, but on the surface, she forced a smile and said to her, "All right, as you wish." As she spoke, her fingers clenched tightly. At this time, Luo Qingtong and the others had already landed on the abandoned continent. This was the first time that Luo Qingtong had come to another continent. The previous Heavenly Wind Inscription City and Mercenary City, although large and located in the Heavenly Wind domain. But they were special existences in the Heavenly Wind domain. They were only cities in the sky, not continents. This abandoned continent was another foreign continent that Luo Qingtong had truly set foot on after leaving the true Spill continent. The spiritual energy here was just like what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. Although it was abundant, it was full of a decaying aura. It was even more serious than what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. It was completely impossible to absorb. This spiritual energy formed a miasma-like existence in the air. It was as black as a thick fog. If this spiritual energy was absorbed into the body, not only would it not enhance one's strength, but it would also block their meridians, making it impossible for them to display their strength normally. If they absorbed too much of it, it would completely block their meridians, making them a cripple, unable to display any strength. This meant that the people who entered this abandoned continent could no longer use the spiritual qi to replenish their strength. But the strength in their body would eventually be exhausted one day. Under such circumstances, how could they replenish their strength? Could it be that they would have to fight hand to hand? Wasn't that too ridiculous? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. The others also showed a look of surprise. On the contrary, Chu Xiaofeng's face didn't show much surprise. Obviously, he had already expected such a situation. This abandoned continent has been abandoned for a long time. The spiritual energy here can no longer be used. But the spiritual herbs here can be used. I don't know why, but the heart of this dead continent suddenly condensed heavenly net grass. Under such circumstances, the spiritual herbs and precious herbs here have all recovered. The power of the qi of the Great Way contained in them is enough for us to replenish our strength. However, those spiritual herbs and precious herbs are extremely hard to come by. The places where they are located are all guarded by magical beasts and demonic plants that have been contaminated by the waste spiritual qi. All of you have to be careful and don't recklessly use the power within your body. Once the energy in one's body is exhausted, one will be no different from a cripple in this abandoned continent. Chu Xiaofeng instructed everyone. Yes. Everyone acknowledged in a deep voice. At this time, Luo Qingtong saw a group of mercenaries waiting in front. Or rather, they were the representatives of the mercenary groups that came in before them. When the mercenaries saw Luo Qingtong and the others land on the ground, they immediately surrounded them with smiles. Little 7. Seventh young master. Everyone had flattering smiles on their faces as they tried to curry favor with him. After the mercenaries came to this abandoned continent, they realized that they were right to insist on calling Luo Qingtong along. Damn it, almost all the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent couldn't be used. They could only rely on their own strength and the spiritual herbs and precious herbs in this abandoned continent to replenish their strength. All the spiritual herbs and precious herbs that they brought were all corroded by the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent. In the end, they were completely rotten and could no longer be used. Chapter 2497. It was also because the Tianfeng Chu clan didn't tell them about the situation on the abandoned continent. One had to know that the environment on the abandoned continent was so harsh and the conditions were so harsh. Even the greediest people would think twice. After all, it would be a great loss if they died on the abandoned continent. For warriors, without strength, there was no guarantee. It was too dangerous on the abandoned continent. It was no wonder that the Tianfeng Chu clan had to summon the people of the Tianfeng mercenary city to act as guards for their juniors. Firstly, it was to prevent the two clans from tampering with the selection of guards. Secondly, it was to reduce the casualties of their own clans. Damn it, they really had a good idea. However, even if the people of the Tianfeng mercenary city knew about this, they could only accept it. After all, they were already here. How could they leave now? Even if they wanted to leave, the Tianfeng Chu clan guarding outside wouldn't allow them to do so. Besides, they had signed an employment agreement with the Tianfeng Chu clan. They could only accept it. But fortunately, they remembered that they had called Luo Xiaoqi over. With Luo Xiaoqi, they would have a guarantee on the abandoned continent. Luo Xiaoqi's observation ability was more useful than anything else on the abandoned continent. Everyone was very glad that they were thick-skinned and that Elder Fu was shameless. Otherwise, where were they going to find someone to guard the abandoned continent for them? They couldn't count on the Tianfeng Chu clan. Perhaps they couldn't see as clearly as Luo Xiaoqi. Everyone was looking forward to Luo Qingtong's appearance. Seeing that Luo Qingtong, Chu Xiaofeng, and the others didn't appear for a long time. They were about to die from anxiety. The others and the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan left first. They were left here to wait for Luo Qingtong. They would catch up later. Seeing Luo Qingtong appear, they were so excited that they almost cried. Quick, quick, quick. Little seventh young master, look around. Is there anything we need to pay attention to? Also, this is the secret signal that we have discussed. Young Master Shao Qi, if you encounter something that requires special attention, you must mark it with the secret signal and tell us if we can touch it or not. The group had already come up with a set of danger level markers that were suitable for them. From no danger to absolute danger and untouchable, a total of 5 levels were waiting for Luo Qingtong to mark them. At that time, they would not listen to the Tianfeng Chu family. They would only listen to Luo Qingtong. She told them not to touch it, and they were determined not to touch it. They only touched what they were told to do. Otherwise, he would lose his life in this abandoned continent. Yes. Luo Qingtong looked at them and nodded with a smile. She had previously promised these mercenaries that she would keep an eye out for them on this abandoned continent. Luo Qingtong was very clear that in this abandoned continent, her strength was not strong. If he wanted to obtain the Sky Luo grass, he would have to resort to some extreme measures. These mercenaries would be her help at a critical moment. Most importantly, these people had always protected her before. Their nature was neither good nor bad, but they knew how to repay kindness. Luo Qingtong didn't mind helping them. Not to mention that they had stood up for her in front of Chu Cooper before. Okay, take a paper and write it down yourselves. Luo Qingtong glanced at the set of danger levels they gave and memorized it in her heart. These people all came from different mercenary groups, and the badges they wore were all different. Under such circumstances, he finally relaxed his nerves a little. Otherwise, he would have made a move the moment these people appeared. Then he realized that these people were all here for Luo Qingtong. He was still puzzled. Although this young man was quick-witted, he didn't seem to be strong. Why were these people chasing after him so much? In fact, it wasn't just weak. Chu Xiaofeng had never seen a mercenary weaker than Luo Qingtong. He didn't know how someone who wasn't even in the exalted realm managed to get into the mission. When she found out that it was the mercenaries who had requested her to come, she was a little curious. But he still couldn't see what was so special about her. At this moment, Luo Qingtong made a move. Only then did he know how powerful the young man's ability was. He also had information about the spiritual herb in the other party's hand. However, he only knew that it was the Thousand Threads grass, which was very strange and rare. Although it was a top-grade spiritual herb, it was also very dangerous to pluck and couldn't be touched casually. Chapter 2499. Not only that, but Chu Xiaofeng was also stunned as he listened to Luo Qingtong and the mercenaries explain the general growing environment of the Thousand Threads grass and what kind of places it might be found. Based on the characteristics of the surrounding environment and the general scene, one could determine that the Thousand Threads grass was nearby. Damn. Even the top disciples of the Tianfeng Chu family didn't have such information. This Luo Xiaoqi was simply amazing. Only now did Chu Xiaofeng know what kind of treasure he had picked up. He had chosen the people of the Red Flame mercenary group because he had long understood the character and strength of the people of the Red Flame mercenary group. He also couldn't stand Chu Ku'er's arrogance, so he took them under his command. At that time, he didn't think so much. As for Luo Qingtong, it was because she was a member of the Red Flame mercenary group. Although Chu Xiaofeng was dissatisfied with her strength, he thought that she was alone and wouldn't hinder him from recruiting the people of the Red Flame mercenary group, so he didn't care too much. Who would have thought that he had picked up a treasure? Damn! No wonder when he was at the mercenary square, those people were so excited and rushed to sign up with him. Chu Xiaofeng thought that he was more charming. But it turned out that they all came for Luo Qingtong. Chu Xiaofeng's lips twitched. Fortunately, he didn't like to show off like some people, otherwise, his face would really be swollen. Then he thought of Chu Ku, who wanted to use the information on the abandoned continent to recruit Luo Qingtong and the others, and he was overjoyed. No wonder the people around him didn't give him any face and didn't even go to an ordinary mercenary group. It turned out that they had Luo Qingtong as a treasure. Chu Ku relied on Chu Yufei's prestige and wanted to poach him, but she didn't know that he had a treasure on his side. Chu Xiaofeng had no doubt that if it weren't for the family limiting the number of guards each person had, all of them would come here. These people would most likely all run over to his side, causing the rest of the Chu clan's disciples to become powerless without any support. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. Luo Qingtong had previously helped him teach the third elder and Chu Ku a lesson. She had helped the eighth elder's faction regain their face and reputation. She had even taken advantage of the victory and exposed the third elder's faction. Chu Xiaofeng had already decided that after entering the abandoned continent, he would protect Luo Qingtong. He didn't expect the other party to give him such a surprise. Perhaps he might really be able to return victorious from this trip to the abandoned continent. Even if he didn't get the sky Luo grass, he would still get a lot of it. Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. After Luo Qingtong taught the mercenaries everything she knew, she dismissed them. At this moment, she suddenly felt a strong gust of wind rushing towards her. In the next second, her belt was abruptly lifted and she was lifted into the air. Yi Qianren carried her in her arms. "I'll take her away for a while." Yi Qianxian left this sentence and disappeared with Luo Qingtong. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Chu Xiaofeng, who was about to approach Luo Qingtong and ask her how she knew, was dumbfounded. The surroundings were so dangerous. Where was he taking her? Chapter 2500. Splash. Luo Qingtong was thrown into the river by Yi Qianming. She splashed water all over her body and her whole body was wet. "Hey! What are you doing?" Luo Qingtong's eyes widened and she pretended to be angry at Yi Qianming in the river. She had already guessed what was going on when the other party took action. Thinking that the other party suspected that she was Luo Qingtong, she was afraid that he had a certain understanding of her identity as Luo Qingtong. In this way, it was normal that he couldn't control himself when he saw her ability to see through those spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. She didn't resist. She would let the other party see whether she was Luo Qingtong or not. Luo Qingtong's eyes were filled with anger, but Yi Qianming didn't care about her at all. He stared unblinkingly at the young man's body in the water. He watched as his body was completely soaked in the water. His clothes were all wet and stuck to his body. His thin lips were hidden behind the mask, and they were getting tighter and tighter. Luo Qingtong's figure was thin and thin. She was originally a petite girl with a curvaceous figure. But after taking the small illusion pill, she became a young man and looked very thin and weak. The clothes were pressed against her body, and soon her flat figure was revealed. Adam's apple, chest, butt. Yi Qianming's eyes swept over every part of Luo Qingtong's body. His eyes became deeper and deeper and he became more and more disappointed. It wasn't her. He was really possessed. Once again, he suspected that Luo Xiaoqi was a woman, Luo Qingtong. But the other party was clearly a man. Yi Qianming stared at Luo Qingtong's chest without saying a word. The latter simply took off her robe, leaving only a thin undergarment, which outlined her outline and clearly revealed her flat chest. She raised her eyebrows at Yi Qianming and said, "How is it? Have you seen enough? Am I a man or a woman? Am I the Luo Qingtong you mentioned? Do you want to take off my clothes and see?" Luo Qingtong's heart was filled with hatred. She didn't know what was going on with this person. He was fixated on her identity as Luo Qingtong. This was a good opportunity for him to see clearly, so as to avoid any future troubles. She walked out of the water and ran her fingers through her hair. She let down her wet hair. Her whole body was wet. Walking out of the river like this, she looked like a bewitching siren. However, the ferocious and ugly birthmark on her face unconsciously destroyed some of her beauty. Luo Qingtong's figure was neither fast nor slow as she walked in front of Yi Qianming. She looked up at him and crossed her arms. "Do you want to strip me naked and have a look?" "Maybe." Her lips suddenly curled up. "It'll be bigger than yours if I take it out." That smile was so devilish and charming that Yi Qianming fell into a trance. It was too similar, but it wasn't. As Luo Qingtong came closer, Yi Qianming saw Luo Qingtong's flat body more clearly. His eyes were deep as he stared at Luo Qingtong's body. Then, with a swish, he disappeared in front of her. "Hey!" Luo Qingtong stared at his disappearing back. This person just left her behind and ran away. Damn it, how could she go back? However, Luo Qingtong also knew that the place Yi Qianming took her to was not far. As long as she waited here, Chu Xiaofeng and the others would soon find her. Therefore, she was not very anxious and just sat by the river and waited. In fact, she could go back by herself. But she had to put on a show. She was Luo Shaoqi, who had no strength. Why should she go back by herself? Chapter 25:01. Damn it! Luo Qingtong stared at the two lumps that were rapidly swelling in front of her and suddenly covered her chest. MMP. The small illusory shaping pill lost its effect just like that. Luo Qingtong quickly took another small illusory shaping pill. Fortunately, she had refined a few more pills before, so she was waiting to take them when they lost their effect. However, because the small illusory shaping pill was in the abandoned continent, its aura was greatly reduced. Luo Qingtong estimated that it could only last for a few days. Damn it! When it rains, it pours. Fortunately, that man left first. At this time, Luo Qingtong was very glad that the other party left her alone. If not, her identity would definitely be exposed. But what was the other party's identity? Why did he persistently pursue her identity as Luo Qingtong? Luo Qingtong originally thought that the other party was from the Central Inscription Union, but now it didn't seem like it. The other party kept suspecting her. If he was from the Central Inscription Union, she was afraid that she would have been arrested long ago. But if not, who was the other party? While Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, she didn't notice that somewhere behind her, a pair of eyes were shocked at her change. Luo Shaoqi was a woman. Yu Mingqian's eyes changed rapidly. The eyes inside were dark and deep. He knew that Luo Shaoqi was Xie, but he didn't expect her to be a woman. Thinking of the various methods that the other party had revealed in Sky Wind Inscription City, unruly and unbridled, extremely confident and unrestrained. Yu Mingqian's eyes became darker and darker. Woman, no wonder she didn't let him get close. It turned out that she was a woman. That explained it. She was afraid that his service would expose her identity, so she had been resisting his approach. Then, should he use this identity to threaten her and make her reveal information about the divine inscriptions? Yu Mingqian thought so, and his eyes turned slightly. However, he quickly dispelled this thought. The white jade-masked man had been investigating Luo Shaoqi's identity. Maybe there was a relationship between them. That man was too strong, and there were too many variables. If he exposed Luo Shaoqi's identity, it might not be worth it. If the other party was not threatened by him and directly exposed his identity, and joined forces with the white jade-masked man, Yu Mingqian's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. she quickly turned around and left. After he left, Chu Xiaofeng and the others quickly came looking for him. "Little Seven, are you all right?" Chu Xiaofeng and the others were relieved to see that Luo Qingtong, who was sitting by the river, was unscathed. They were shocked when Yi Qianming suddenly kidnapped Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, Bei Qing, Feng Yu and the others were there. They were not worried that Yi Qianming would harm Luo Qingtong. But why did they kidnap Luo Qingtong? Chu Xiaofeng, Guifeng, and the others were filled with questions and couldn't help but ask. Luo Qingtong's face was full of smiles. "Who knows, maybe he's crazy. Am I right?" She looked at Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others happily and asked. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were speechless. They didn't know what to say. Their master's action just now was indeed a bit sudden. They looked at Luo Qingtong's wet clothes and probably knew what their master was thinking. Alas! Master, why did you do this? Chapter 25:02. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others sighed in their hearts. Looking at Luo Qingtong, Feng Yu stepped forward and apologized. "I'm sorry, young master Shao Qi. My madam is missing and our young master is too anxious, so he's in a bad mood. If he offended you in any way, please forgive him." "Madam." Luo Qingtong's eyes seemed to have caught something in an instant and looked towards Feng Yu. "Is your young master surnamed Yi?" she almost asked, but in the end, she forced herself to hold it back. She carefully examined the other party, not sure if they were Feng Yu and the others. But the other party said that the person just now was their young master and Luo Qingtong was their madam. Luo Qingtong really couldn't stop thinking about it. Her eyes turned and her mind flashed with Yi Qianming's every move when he checked her identity. Her heart became happier and happier. That stupid man. Luo Qingtong didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Yi Qianming's actions. It was such a simple thing, but he made it so complicated. As long as he said that he was Yi Qianming, how could she deny her identity? But he didn't say it. However, Luo Qingtong also saw something unusual in the way Yi Qianming and the others hid their identities. Although she didn't know why they were here and why they had to hide their identities, they must have their reasons. Therefore, even if Luo Qingtong had guessed Yi Qianming's identity, she still suppressed the joy in her heart. She didn't expose Yi Qianming's identity on the spot. But the corners of her mouth and the light in her eyes couldn't be suppressed. "What's the matter? Your young master hasn't come back yet." Looking at Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others, Luo Qingtong could tell at a glance that Yi Qianming wasn't among them. Speaking of which, it was quite funny. She clearly had a special feeling for men, but because he was probing her, she ignored it again and again. The two of them were fools. They missed each other time and time again. Really? Luo Qingtong's face was covered in blood when she thought about how she had deliberately let Yi Qianming see her flat chest and told him that if she took it out, it might be bigger than his. It was simply, other than asking if she was Luo Qingtong, couldn't that damned man ask a few more questions? For instance, the true spill continent or Little Silver. What a stubborn man. However, Luo Qingtong also knew that at that time, Yi Qianming probably didn't think so much. He only wanted to confirm whether she was Luo Qingtong or not. And at that time, she was in the appearance of a man, so in his disappointment, he naturally wouldn't ask any more questions. However, even if she looked like a man, Yi Qianming would still pay attention to her and suspect her. This made Luo Qingtong's heart full. Her lips were slightly raised and her eyes were almost curved into a crescent moon. Her heart was filled with indescribable satisfaction and happiness. If he didn't care and love her too much, with Yi Qianming's arrogant and cold temperament, how could he suspect that the boy was her again and again? And it was after seeing the characteristics of a man on her body. That silly man. Luo Qingtong couldn't wait to see Yi Qianming. However, the latter wasn't in the group, which made her anxious. Her attitude changed too quickly. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.